Canada have announced the roster set to face Ecuador and Venezuela this November window, but it is a roster with many surprises, many shocking changes within this squad that nobody could have predicted or expected, with shock names being left off this roster and even surprise dual nationals being added to this Jesse Marsch November roster that is set to face two very good footballing nations in Ecuador and Venezuela in a major test for this Canadian national team ahead of the 2026 World Cup. And we're going to break it down going from goalkeepers to defenders, midfielders, and wrapping it up with the attackers. But before we jump into it, guys, make sure to drop into the comments and let me know your thoughts on Jesse Marsch's squad and if you would have changed anything to this team. Smash that like button, hit that sub button, and let's jump straight into the goalkeepers. As Jesse Marsch has called in Maxime Crépeau, Dane St. Clair, and a new dual national in Owen Goodman. This is an extremely exciting call-up from Jesse Marsch and the Canadian men's national team. At one point, Jesse Marsch said Owen Goodman would be ineligible to represent Canada and not able to get his passport to represent the Canadian men's national team. But that now has truly changed, as the 21-year-old goalkeeper and the dual national has chosen to accept the call-up from Jesse Marsch and will represent Canada this November window. Yes, he of course probably won't start this window, but this is still a huge boost. This is still a very exciting dual national call-up. Owen Goodman is a very talented goalkeeper with an abundance of potential. At the age of 21 years old, he has come through the Crystal Palace youth setup and proven himself at every single level, getting multiple loan spells within the lower divisions of English football, and has proven himself at every single loan spell, has done an incredible job wherever he's gone. And at the age of 21, that is unheard of for a goalkeeper. And the fact he is playing so well at such a young age, this is a major achievement from Jesse Marsch to get Owen Goodman to represent the Canadian men's national team. It is extremely exciting. Yes, he might just be a third choice goalkeeper, but this is a third choice goalkeeper that in the near future could easily be Canada's #1 starter. In the near future, could be starting for Canada in pivotal and important games. This is a talented young goalkeeper who could easily jump the ranks and be Canada's #1 before you know it. But it's also exciting to see Jesse Marsch go with Owen Goodman and go with the youth as the third choice goalkeeper instead of going with experience with a James Pantemis or a Jonathan Sirois, someone who has the potential to learn, to enjoy a camp, and to learn what this setup is and what this team is going to be about, instead of someone who's been there and knows what these camps are. So bringing in Owen Goodman does a huge heap of good for Jesse Marsch as well as this Canadian team, because the fan base will absolutely love the Owen Goodman call-up. But then you have Dane St. Clair and Maxime Crépeau, the 1A, 1B conversation, the true conversation within this goalkeeping locker room. Who gets the start? Who is the #1 goalkeeper? And I don't expect any more clarity in that role this window compared to what we had last window. I expect Dane St. Clair to get one game. I expect Maxime Crépeau to get one game. And I still expect a 1A, 1B situation. I don't think we'll know who the #1 goalkeeper is until the March window. I still think this window we should see one of those two goalkeepers get both games and truly lock down that role under Jesse Marsch and have that confidence and feeling going into March that they are carrying that role into that window. But I don't expect that to happen, and I still expect to see Canada rotate both their #1 starters this window. But let's move on to the defenders, because this is where there's a lot of shocks. This is where there's a lot of surprises, as it's Zorhan Bassong, Derek Cornelius, Alfie Jones, another new dual national, Richie Larea, Kamal Miller, Nico Sigor, and Joel Waterman. There's a lot of surprises. There's a lot of names left off this list, mostly and predominantly down to injuries. No Alfonso Davies, no Alistair Johnston, no Moise Bombito, no Luke Defuger-Roll, and no Jamie Knight-Labelle. A few major surprises within that defendant group, predominantly with Luc de Fougerolles, but I'm predicting and I'm expecting that is down to some kind of niggling injury he has picked up in Belgium with Dender. This I'm recording straight after the roster is dropped, so I don't know any information to why he has been left off this team, but it is more than likely down to some kind of injury because it cannot be down to form because Luc de Fougerolles is doing very well within Belgium. But bringing in Alfie Jones, that is why Jesse Marsch wanted Alfie Jones, the Middlesbrough centre-back who is 28 years old, because he brings in leadership, he brings in depth, he brings in quality, and this is something this Canadian team needs. When you have so many injuries on the back line, when you have some inexperience back there, it is a huge addition. But the major question, of course, will be around the center backs and who starts next to Derek Cornelius this window. Because it was going to be Luc de Fougerolles and probably Alfie Jones. But now what does it become? Does it become Alfie Jones starts both games next to Derek Cornelius and builds that chemistry, builds that form next to another top center back or a starting center back within this Canadian men's national team? Or does he rotate between Joel Waterman and Alfie Jones? That is more so what I'm expecting. I think Joel Waterman gets the first game next to Derek Cornelius, and then you see Alfie Jones step in and take the second game once he's worked his way into this team, learned what the tempo is like, and acclimatized himself to the system and tactics. Because the center back conversation is really the only one you can have on this back line. The fullbacks are locked, set in stone, and written in paper. It is Richie Laryea and Nico Sigor, and there is no other conversation needed there because Zorhan Basong will be used as a great utility to come in for Richie Laryea throughout this window, but he will not be starting ahead of Richie Laryea at left back. And then you move on to the midfield. There is another surprise and another shock, of course, within this midfield department, as the call-ups are Ali Ahmed, Tejon Buchanan, Mathieu Choinière, Stephen Eustachio, Junior Hoylett, Ismail Kone, Jaden Nelson, Jonathan Osorio, and Nathan Saliba. A strong, a deep, and a very good midfield group, but one that sees Jacob Schaffelberg left off this roster. Something I never expected to see. Someone who seemed like a mainstay in a Jesse Marsch squad. Someone who seemed like he was never getting left off a Jesse Marsch team. Like a true lock off the bench for Jesse Marsch. Someone who brought the pace that Jesse Marsch wanted late in a game. But that seems like it's changed. Jacob Schaffelberg has now been left off this roster, and that could be down to inconsistency both for club as well for country. Jacob Schaffelberg seemingly has not played well for Canada in the past few windows. He hasn't really showed up for Nashville as well in the MLS or being truly consistent for them this season. And Canada now is very deep at the left midfield role. You have Ali Ahmed, who is your true starter right now. You have Jaden Nelson, who will be backing him up and almost has sort of the same profile as Jacob Schaffelberg. Jaden Nelson is extremely fast and possesses some of the same kind of skill set that Jacob has as well, and I'd argue in a better way. And then you also have Junior Hoylett, who can play off of both flanks, both the right midfield as well as left midfield, and also can play at the number 10. There's 3 left midfielders in this squad already, and Jacob Schaffelberg doesn't get ahead of any of them, which is truly telling for Jesse Marsch and for this Canadian roster, and I'm actually pleasantly happy to see it. I think these 3 left midfielders are better currently than Jacob Schaffelberg, and you could even see Marcelo Flores jump ahead of Jacob Schaffelberg in that pecking order. And Marcelo Flores, of course, being added as a training player this window for this Canadian men's national team, bringing the dual national count in this November window to 3 dual nationals for the Canadian men's national team. And of course, the huge question within the midfield, just like the center backs, will be who starts in the heart of the midfield, in that spine. Just like the back line with who starts next to Cornelius, this is who starts next to Eustáquio. The only difference is it's true starters within the midfield. It's Ismail Kone or Nathan Saliba. Ismail Kone has been fantastic in the Serie A this year with Sassuolo, and Nathan Saliba has been great with Anderlecht this year in the Belgian Pro League. So it'll be a huge question for Jesse Marsch who starts next to Stefan Eustáquio. Is it matchup based? Is it opposition based? So that'll be a true tell. I really think it'll be Ismail Kone who gives you more dynamic dribbling and attacking prowess, but Nathan Saliba and Ismail Kone could also easily pair up together in one of these two matches, giving you more legs and more dynamism within the midfield. And moving on to the forward line, there is even another surprise. As we see Theo Bair, Jonathan David, Promise David, Kyle Larin, and Tani Oluwase called up this window. Theo Bair comes in as a true surprise this window for the Canadian men's national team. He has been on absolute form since going for his loan spell to Lausanne-Sport in the new league, where he's getting his loan spell, playing very good football for himself. And this is very exciting because Theo Bair was in a slump in the French league, in Ligue 1, and then he goes and plays for Lausanne-Sport in the Swiss top flight, and he is off to a flyer, scoring 7 goals in 11 games across all competition in league play, having 7 starts in 8 matches, having 5 goals in the league. He has had terrific form, but the more surprising thing here is that Jesse Marsch has reverted. He has gone back to 5 strikers. There is no Daniel Jebison, there's no Jason Russell-Rowe. As surprising as those are in a way, the more surprising thing is here, he's back to calling up 5 strikers. And does this team truly need 5 strikers in this system, in this 2-striker system? I don't believe we do. I think we need more depth out wide at midfield, out wide at fullback. I think the depth needs to be there with how high pressing and how dynamic and high tempo this Canadian team is. Do we really need 5 strikers? I don't believe we do. And I think Jesse Marsch eventually is going to have to come to the fact that Kyle Larin deserves to be dropped. His form at the club level has been abysmal for Feyenoord, hasn't been able to start, and probably won't ahead of Ueda for Feyenoord in the Eredivisie, and can't crack that team. He isn't getting regular minutes. He isn't in the starting 11. While you have Theo Bair crushing it in Switzerland for Lausanne-Sport. You have Jonathan David, albeit struggling, but will always start for Canada. You have Promise David on fine form for Union Saint-Gilloise. You have Tani Oluwase. This is a very deep striking pool. And the fact Kyle Larin still gets a call-up as the 4th or 5th choice is very surprising. And I don't think he deserves it. And come March, might be forced to be dropped from this Canadian team. You can't be affording to carry someone due to leadership or quote-unquote brotherhood that this Canadian team has. Albeit he brings the family element, he brings that experience this Canadian team has from the past. This is a very deep, a very strong Canadian striking pool that you can't afford to just carry someone on this roster that is in absolutely abysmal form at the club level. Albeit I love Kyle Larin, I love what he's done for this national team, but he can't be holding up spots from players like Daniel Jebison and other number 9s who could easily be taking that spot ahead of him, or Jacob Schaffelberg who could get a spot in the midfield, or someone at fullback who could step in and earn a place in this team, because 5 strikers simply don't feel like it needs to be needed within this roster. But let me know what you guys think about this team. Players being left out like Jacob Schaffelberg, like Daniel Jebison, like Luc de Fougerolles, and even Jamie Knight-Labelle, as well as the new surprise additions such as Marcelo Flores as a training player, Alfie Jones, Owen Goodman. Let me know your thoughts down below on this roster selection, on this surprising November roster selection down below in the comments. Smash that like button, hit that sub button, guys, because your support has been absolutely incredible and I truly appreciate it. And I'll see you guys all for the next one. Peace.